Got college football tonight. Maction. Kent State against Buffalo. Toledo against Akron. Maction. He is Albert Breer. He's the Monday morning quarterback, senior NFL reporter. All right, we've been talking about the let's overreact to what we saw with the Ravens or overreact with what we saw with the Chargers. Let me start with the Ravens. If I said the Ravens are a true Super Bowl contender, you would say?
I would say they are. Yeah. I mean, they were in the AFC Championship game last year. And they've been knocking on the door for a while. So obviously they got to play better than they did in the title game last year. But I mean, if you look at the field in the AFC, I think they can compete with Kansas City and Buffalo? Because that's really what we're talking about. I do. And one of the cool things about the Ravens, Dan, is like they've continued to get better over the course of the year. Like they were turning over 60% of their offensive line. On defense, they lost their edge rushers. They lost, Patrick Queen. And essentially, like they were gambling on their ability to develop people through their program. And it went to the coaching staff, too, on replacing Mike McDonald with Zach Orr. And so I think that's why this is a team that I think you say has been ascending, that Steeler game notwithstanding over the course of the year. And so, like, I think it's fair to think like they're going to be better at the end of December than they are right now, and then they should be better at the end of January than they are at the end of December. So, yes, I think they're a Super Bowl contender.
And it feels like we're top heavy. There's 3 teams that could go to the Super Bowl in the AFC, and there's 2 in the NFC.
Or the Lions and Eagles, you'd say?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Yeah, I would say. I mean, like you have like those teams that it's like if they sneak in, could they catch fire, right? So that'd be Cincinnati and San Francisco, right? Like if one of those teams sneaks in, like those teams have been to Super Bowls, so could those teams get in as like the 6 or 7 seed, and then all of a sudden you look up and like they've beat a couple teams that you would have expected them to beat, and they're in the conference title game, you know?
And I want to be fair to the Packers and the Vikings as well,
right? Yeah, and I think the Packers and the Vikings to me are like such an awesome story of a football operation that's like sort of turned things over. And the amazing thing about them is that you lose like 2 guys you could argue are the most important players. All due respect to Justin Jefferson over the last decade for that franchise, right? Because the longevity thing with Sam Darnold and Daniil Hunter. Well, they've got younger, and you could argue maybe better at those 2 spots, like replacing Kirk Cousins with Sam Darnold, replacing Daniil Hunter with Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard and Dallas Turner. Like, I think they've set themselves up long term. Do I think they can win a Super Bowl or get to a Super Bowl with their issue at tackle right now with with some of the things they've been working through, injury wise, maybe not, but I'm really impressed with what they've done. And I think they're set up much better for the next 5 years for it. The Packers still feel like they've got a high ceiling. So I'm with you on that one. Like if the Packers can jam on the accelerator the way they did at the end of last year, then obviously they'd be very dangerous going into the playoffs.
What's the Daniel Jones market right now?
So I think the Daniel Jones market's one that's marked by curiosity. Is probably the best way to put it, right? Like if I'm Daniel Jones, I'm following the Sam Darnold plan. I am looking for a place where I can go and learn, and I can go be in a good system, and I can go kind of take a breath and reset. And the temptation, of course, would be like, well, do you go to, say Vegas, where they've got potentially an opportunity for him to play within a couple of weeks? Or do you go to Dallas where, if Cooper Rush, stubs his toe, you get in the game. And I understand that. Like, to me, like, and I think there are people around him who are thinking this way. He looked broken with the Giants. And like a huge part of it was like his inability to pull the trigger on plays. Like there were plays in that Carolina game where it was clearly there for him, and he either overshot somebody or he held the ball and took a sack, and you could see the frustration on the sidelines. Like a couple of people who evaluate this stuff said to me, go look at the all 22 and look at the sideline on this play or that play. And you can see everyone throwing their hands up. Like that's the point that it was at, which is part of the reason why they had to bench him. And eventually he winds up being released. So I don't think that's a player who needs to jump in there and play right now. I think that's a player who needs to hit the pause button and kind of reset himself a little bit and get in a good learning environment. And to me, that's what Sam Darnold was, and why I think Sam Darnold benefited so much from that year with Kyle Shanahan playing behind Brock Purdy in San Francisco. Like I think that's what Daniel Jones needs right now. So my guess, I know some people have said this to him. My guess would be the best landing spot for him would be a place like Buffalo,
Hmm.
Baltimore, where he's not going to play, but he'll be in a good environment to learn.
Could you see a scenario where the Jets bench Aaron Rodgers by the end of the year?
I mean, if they're out of it, sure, that could be a mutual thing.
But aren't they out of it?
I mean, like there's out of it, like you and I know they're out of it, and then there's out of it, like we're out of it. you know.
Wait a minute. Explain. Like, they're not out yet?
Well, I mean, like the coach is still. I'll put it this way: the coach is still trying to sell his roster on like, hey, if X and Y and Z happens, this thing's not over. Like so. If you're Jeff Ulbrich, you can't sell that to the team and say, oh yeah, oh yeah, Aaron, you can go ahead and schedule some tea times for this week. You know what I mean? You can't sell that to the rest of the players if you're doing that. So like I think that's the subtle difference we're talking about, right? Like the difference between you and I both know the Jets aren't going anywhere versus like the coach and everyone in the roster being resigned to it. I don't think the Jets are quite at that point where everyone's resigned to it yet, because there is like if they somehow won six in a row, then could they sneak in maybe, So I think those are two different things. But I certainly think as we get closer to the end of the year and all this crystallizes and it becomes real that there's just no chance and that it's over, then you start to talk about things like making a mutual decision on Aaron Rodgers, whether or not it's time to shut him down.
Okay, but what kind of market is there going to be for Aaron Rodgers next season?
Well, I mean, the big thing is whether or not he wants to play. And, one thing, and a couple times I've talked to him about it that he brought up is not wanting to go out the way that he went out last year, right? So if he didn't want to go out having torn his Achilles, do you think he's want to go out like this? Maybe not, So I don't think I don't think there'll be a robust market for him. And I think it'll be narrow the same way it was narrow for him a couple of years ago, where you need to check a lot of boxes to even want him. But could there be an opportunity out there for him? Sure. I think there could be an opportunity out there for him. He's still Aaron Rodgers. I think the one thing that kind of cuts him off at the knees a little bit is like, if you're a team with a young quarterback or a team that has designs on going and getting a young quarterback, do you want Aaron Rodgers as the guy in that room with your young quarterback? Maybe not. Now, I think he would argue that it worked out pretty well for Jordan Love, but maybe you wouldn't want all the noise that Aaron Rodgers would bring with him into a quarterback room. But I have to think somebody out there would look at it and say, yeah, we've got a roster that we think is close. We're not happy with our quarterback situation the same way the Jets were a couple of years ago. Maybe we go and do this. And again, I wouldn't totally rule out the idea that he's back with the Jets next year just because we have no idea who's running the organization next year.
Albert Breer, the Monday Morning Quarterback, senior NFL reporter. How many head coaching openings do you think we'll have by season's end?
I mean, 7 to 10. We already have two. So we have the Jets.
7 to 10.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I like looking at it like, so we have two. We have the Saints and the Jets. I think we can agree that Jags are sort of a fait accompli, right? So that's three. Dallas looks like it's going that way. That's four. So now you only need three more. So I think it's somewhere between 7 and 10. Like I don't think it's gonna be record breaking or anything like that, but I think it's somewhere between 7 and 10. And it's gonna be an interesting market too, just because I don't think there's like one trend that's like overwhelmingly like, oh yeah, everybody's gonna be picking from this bucket. Because you have different types of candidates out there. You have the young offensive guru and Ben Johnson, but you don't have a ton of guys who fit that profile, right? Like there aren't a ton of them. You have, your former head coach, obviously Belichick, Vrabel. And then, you have the ex-player category, the Dan Campbell, the Mike Vrabel, the D'Amico Ryans, that category with a guy like Aaron Glenn. So, I think teams that are jumping into this year are going to look at it and say, this isn't the deepest market of candidates. And not only that, there isn't like one bucket that's particularly deep. So we're really going to have to take a global look at the market and be willing to pick from a different bucket than maybe we go in intending to.
But if you're looking at these potential openings, most desirable, I'm looking at the Jets. Rodgers coming back doesn't make me want to take that job. The Cowboys situation.
No, but yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Dan.
No, but just trying to handicap this. If I look at Jacksonville, do they have their franchise quarterback? The Bears situation to me looks. Now you have that deal with the Bears organization or the owner, but
right.
It really feels like there are pieces there. And do I have potentially the best quarterback available for all of these coaching candidates there, with Chicago as opposed to Dallas or Jacksonville?
Well, Chicago, you do have the advantage of the guy being on a rookie contract too, right? So, like, you have that for the next 2 to 3 years where, he's going to be under cost control and you're going to have the ability to put some things around him because of that. And that's not a small thing. I would agree that I think Chicago and Jacksonville look to me like the ones that have like the easiest path out where you could win for the next couple of years and you could get it up and running pretty fast. I think that they're different setups, though. I think Chicago may be the job for a guy who just wants to go coach, and maybe a better spot for a younger coach because they have a team president and Kevin Warren who's going to be involved. They have, the front office in place. We'll see if Ryan Poles makes it. My guess is that's probably going to depend on the coach hire, but I think the likelihood would be that Poles will help with would be a part of the coaching search if Matt Eberflus doesn't turn it around over the next 6 weeks. So that one may be just like a guy who's coming in just a coach. Jacksonville could be the place where somebody comes in and gets tossed the keys of the kingdom and Shad Khan says, you go fix it, And so like, that's where like for somebody like Belichick, it's, well, if I want to set it up a certain way, this is the one that's kind of giving me the blank slate, the sort of canvas to paint whatever I want to paint here. And so I think they set up a little bit differently. And obviously both the attractiveness of each job is going to depend on your own evaluation of the quarterback. There are a lot of people who think Trevor Lawrence has just been done in by his circumstances. There are others that don't think that highly of Trevor, so how do you see him? How do you see Caleb? What have you heard about Caleb? I think all those things are going to play into how attractive those jobs are to candidates.
Good stuff as always. Happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for joining us, Albert.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving to all you guys. Thanks, Dan.
That's Albert Breer, Monday morning quarterback. Happy Thanksgiving to all you guys over there.
Happy. Thank you, Albert.
Thanks, Albert.
Yeah, there you go.